It doesn't take much effort to see that the West is changing. People have been warning for autocracy, technocracy, oligarchy, and even theocracy. It feels like democracy is in danger. But the rise and fall of democracy is not something new. It was actually already discovered 2200 years ago by a Greek-Roman philosopher called Polybius. Polybius was actually from Greece. He was taken hostage to Rome, in which he discovered a cycle, which he called Anacyclosis. And this cycle goes something like this. A tribal society ultimately chooses a virtuous, strong ruler. Polybius considered this the monarchy. The unchecked power of a single ruler leads to moral corruption, and the monarch becomes a tyrant. The nobles revolt, and they give rise to the aristocracy, which Polybius considered the rule of the virtuous nobles who think not only of themselves but also of the common good. But the aristocracy is also subject to corruption, which ultimately decays into oligarchy, where the aristocrats no longer think of the common good, but primarily of themselves, and they hoard most of the resources. This results in the revolt of the common people, which gives birth to democracy, which is ruled by the people. But even democracy is not free from moral entropy. Democracy ultimately results into populism, where leaders put up the common people against the elite, which results in demagoguery, where politicians make appeals to fears, prejudice, and emotions. And ultimately all of this decays into ochlocracy, where people no longer vote or rule with rationality and sense, but only based on fear, emotion, and panic. Out of this societal panic, the people become more willing to elect a new, strong leader, which will either be a new monarch, a virtuous leader, or will be a tyrant. Of course, Anacyclosis, this pattern, doesn't need to be in this exact order. But the premise is that a just society ultimately decays into an unjust society and gives birth to a just society again, like a pendulum swinging back and forth. Now, Polybius didn't live in the Roman Empire, but in the Roman Republic. And he thought that the Romans had found a way to prevent Anacyclosis, because the Romans had a mixed government, where each type of virtuous society was mixed. The consuls acted like a monarchy, temporary rulers like modern presidents. Then the Senate was the aristocracy, an elite that could have a stabilizing effect on the rash decisions of the consuls, and the wisdom was preserved within the Senate, while the consuls changed every year. And then the popular assemblies were meant to protect the common people against the wishes of the elite. This reflects the way modern democracies are structured too. Of course, now we know that Polybius had a little bit too much confidence in the Roman Republic's ability to withstand Anacyclosis. This democracy ultimately led to populism. Julius Caesar could be considered the most important one. He riled up the common people against the established elite. Then the death of Julius Caesar led to demagoguery. A civil war of 2 years ensued. And after 2 years of fighting, the people became more and more willing to elect a new strong leader, which ultimately became Octavian. And he pretended to protect the democratic elements of the Republic, but in reality a new monarchy was established, with Augustus Caesar as its new monarch. And we know that ultimately this monarchy decayed again into tyranny. So now in hindsight we know that Polybius had too much confidence in the Republic to be immune to moral entropy. And perhaps in the modern West we also have too much confidence in our democracies. Where do you think we are in this cycle? Let me know.